At 0200 hours on October 15, 2025, inside the Federal Security Service Primary Command Center in Moscow, tactical displays erupted in crimson warnings, 40 hostile contacts, electronic signatures screaming across every frequency. High-mobility artillery rocket system launches. Senior officers would soon discover why their billion-dollar integrated air defense network was about to suffer its most humiliating defeat in modern military history. The Russian air defense commander bellowed orders into his headset. Activate all Pantsir batteries. Bring Krasukha-4 electronic warfare systems online immediately. This appeared to be Ukraine's decisive strike, a decapitation attack aimed at the political and military heart of the Russian Federation. From staging areas along the Ukrainian border, a coordinated swarm of 25 first-person view attack drones screamed toward Moscow at maximum velocity, maintaining precise formation just 50 feet above terrain. Another 15 vectors launched simultaneously toward Kaliningrad. Each unmanned aerial vehicle broadcast a spoofed electronic signature that perfectly mimicked the radar return of a multi-million-dollar high-mobility artillery rocket system launch. To Russian ground-based radar operators, this registered as an apocalyptic barrage. Fatal miscalculation. That entire 40-drone demonstration against Moscow was tactical bait. While Russia's most sophisticated air defense systems were fully engaged, neutralizing $1,000 decoy drones in the northern theater, the genuine assault was initiating 800 miles south. Ukraine had just executed the opening phase of Operation Phantom Swarm, a meticulously coordinated strike against 4 of Russia's most strategically vital petroleum refineries. The decoy drones that assaulted Moscow represented merely one component of a multi-layered deception operation. The actual attack drones utilized encrypted Starlink satellite communication links and revolutionary artificial intelligence software that frequency hopped every 2 seconds, rendering them effectively invisible to Russian electronic warfare jamming systems. At 0344 hours, 4 attack drones separated from the primary swarm formation over Volgograd Oblast. Their designated target was the refinery's hydrocracker unit, a sprawling industrial complex of high-pressure pipes and catalytic reactors responsible for removing sulfur compounds from diesel fuel production. Without functional hydrocracking capability, the entire facility's output of military-grade diesel fuel grinds to immediate halt. Russian defensive preparations were comprehensive. A nearby Pantsir S-1 mobile air defense system achieved positive radar lock on all 4 approaching drones. Russian engineers had deployed massive anti-drone nets strung between industrial cranes, creating crude but potentially effective physical barriers. For approximately 90 seconds, tactical mathematics appeared straightforward. 4 Ukrainian attack drones versus layered steel netting and precision-guided surface-to-air missiles. This was the exact moment Ukrainian planners had anticipated. The 4 additional drones in the assault swarm suddenly executed dramatic tactical maneuvers. They ceased low-altitude terrain-following approaches and pitched upward aggressively, climbing to 5,000 feet altitude. As they ascended, each drone activated compact onboard devices called corner reflectors. These simple passive electronic warfare tools precisely angled metal surfaces designed to reflect radar emissions with dramatically amplified intensity. To Russian ground-based radar systems, these 4 drones instantaneously appeared as large and threatening as Caliber cruise missiles. The Pantsir automated fire control system, programmed to always prioritize engagement of the largest, fastest, highest priority threats, was completely deceived. The system instantly dropped targeting locks on the low-flying attack drones and rotated its turrets skyward. Within seconds, the Pantsir battery unleashed a volley of its most expensive 57 E6 surface-to-air interceptor missiles. Russian operators observed as their billion-dollar integrated defense system achieved perfect textbook intercepts against 4 decoy drones. Here is where Ukrainian tactical planning revealed true brilliance. The massive electromagnetic energy output from the Pantsir's own fire control radar, combined with explosive detonations from its interceptor missiles in the upper atmosphere, created temporary but crippling interference waves. For 30 critical seconds, Russian radar systems were effectively blinded by their own defensive counterfire. At that precise moment, a strong atmospheric gust swept across the refinery complex, causing the massive anti-drone netting to sway dramatically, temporarily exposing the rear access points of the hydrocracker unit. A 30-second vulnerability window had been created entirely by Russia's own defensive actions. The 4 genuine attack drones, patiently maintaining positions below radar clutter, received final authorization through encrypted Starlink relay communications. They accelerated to maximum velocity, executed hard banking maneuvers, and transited directly through the exposed gap in defensive netting. They impacted vulnerable pipes and high-pressure vessels of the hydrocracker unit in rapid sequence, delivering devastating kinetic and explosive effects. The resulting fireball and sustained petroleum fire burned for 2 hours, causing estimated damage exceeding $10 million and taking critical fuel production infrastructure completely offline. Volgograd was engulfed in toxic black smoke. 10% of refined fuel supply for Russia's southern military front had been crippled in a single coordinated strike. The next designated target, the Bashneft refinery complex in Ufa, was located over 850 miles from the Ukrainian border. It was protected by the notorious Krasukha-4 electronic warfare system, a jamming platform capable of flooding a 185-mile radius with overwhelming electromagnetic interference. At 0430 hours, the next Ukrainian swarm crossed into Russian airspace. Their target was the Bashneft Ufimsky refinery complex, 850 miles from Ukrainian-controlled territory. The facility's strategic heart was the ELOU Atmospheric Vacuum Tower 6 crude oil distillation unit, massive industrial infrastructure that processes 8 million tons of petroleum annually. Russian defensive commanders immediately grounded all civilian air traffic at Ufa International Airport and activated the Krasukha-4 electronic warfare system at full operational power. This platform floods a 185-mile radius with such overwhelming electromagnetic noise that it completely disrupts guidance systems of any incoming threat. But Ukrainian artificial intelligence systems had already anticipated this exact defensive response. As the electronic warfare jamming wave impacted the drone swarm, the Decoy drones began broadcasting deliberately corrupted global positioning system signals that perfectly mimic drones struggling under sustained electronic assault. The Pantsir fire control computer analyzed what appeared to be wounded, vulnerable targets and initiated engagement sequences. The critical flaw became immediately apparent. The surface-to-air missiles locked onto the nearest authentic radar signature that matched projected flight trajectories. A Russian civilian surveillance drone orbiting just outside the primary jamming cone. Operators could only observe in horror as their multi-million-dollar precision-guided interceptor obliterated their own surveillance asset. The situation degraded from operational failure to absolute catastrophe. The Krasukha-4 was so powerful, it wasn't exclusively blinding Ukrainian drones. It was blinding everything within its operational radius. Russia's own Orlan patrol drones, specifically tasked with detecting low-altitude intruders, suddenly lost command and control links and automatically entered emergency return to base protocols. For 45 critical seconds, the refinery's local aerial surveillance was completely blind. That was the operational window Ukrainian forces required. The actual attack drones, 10 Beaver-class unmanned aerial vehicles, had been navigating silently using internal inertial guidance systems and advanced terrain-matching navigation algorithms. The swarm's artificial intelligence command system utilized encrypted Starlink satellite communications, the one communication method the Krasukha cannot effectively jam, to assign final targeting coordinates. They surged forward at maximum velocity, exploiting a gap in anti-drone netting, which swayed under sudden atmospheric gusts. They impacted the ELOU Atmospheric Vacuum Tower 6 unit with devastating precision, transforming 8 million tons of annual refining capacity into a raging petroleum inferno. Ufa International Airport remained closed for the following 4 hours because of the massive toxic smoke plume drifting across active runways. 15% of Central Asian fuel production capacity had been neutralized. At 0515 hours, Russian military commanders unleashed their premier air superiority asset, a Sukhoi 35 multi-role fighter, armed to maximum combat load, prowling the airspace over Saratov refinery complex. The Ukrainian swarm designated for this target consisted of merely 6 drones confronting a state-of-the-art 4th-generation fighter aircraft. By conventional military assessment, this should represent a massacre. The Sukhoi 35 pilot's powerful Irbis-E phased array radar detected them from maximum range. He banked his aircraft, preparing to eliminate them from the sky. But as he closed engagement range, something registered as tactically wrong. The targets weren't maneuvering like unmanned aerial vehicles. They were gliding, dipping, and executing erratic, unpredictable patterns exactly like a flock of migratory birds. The pilot switched to electro-optical sensors and stared in professional disbelief. They appeared identical to large birds. These were 6 Flamingo variant drones fitted with experimental biomimetic wing structures developed in collaboration with French aerospace engineers. To the Sukhoi 35's advanced radar systems, they registered not as military threats, but as biological clutter. The highly trained combat pilot faced a bizarre tactical dilemma. Does he authorize launch of a multi-million-dollar air-to-air missile against what could legitimately be a flock of geese? His professional pride dictated response. He engaged afterburners to close distance for visual confirmation, executing a high-G turning maneuver that pushed his airframe to structural limits. That was the precise mistake Ukrainian planners had anticipated. The Sukhoi 35's violent aerobatic maneuver created massive wake turbulence in the surrounding atmosphere. For several critical seconds, this turbulence completely scrambled radar returns for ground-based S-400 Triumph air defense radar, looking upward from below. Simultaneously, the pilot, now completely fixated on his phantom prey, had been tactically lured miles away from the refinery complex itself. A perfect temporary blind spot had been engineered through exploiting the pilot's own aggressive instincts. The genuine attack drones, a second assault swarm that had been using the Flamingo decoys as radar screening, received final targeting data from the relay artificial intelligence. They accelerated forward at maximum velocity. The anti-drone netting, improperly secured against predicted high wind conditions, had already been blown partially aside. The drones demonstrated no hesitation. They impacted their designated targets, and the Saratov refinery erupted in secondary explosions visible for miles. The Sukhoi 35 pilot finally achieved positive missile lock on the last remaining decoy drone, vaporizing a $1,000 assembly of foam and basic electronics in a brilliant flash of perceived victory. He had won his personal engagement, completely unaware that he had already lost the strategic battle. At 0540 hours, the Ryazan refinery represented an absolute fortress. A Tor M2 short-range air defense system, capable of simultaneously engaging 4 separate targets, formed the inner defensive ring. A battery of Pantsir S-1 combined gun missile systems covered mid-range approaches. Thick, multi-layered anti-drone netting wrapped around high-value industrial units. And circling above the entire complex was an Orlan 10 reconnaissance drone, acting as an airborne command platform. Russian defensive commanders had engineered an absolute kill box. 7 Ukrainian Leleka attack drones approached their target, the L-24300 hydrotreater unit. They flew directly into the concentrated defensive fire. As soon as the Tor M2 fire control radar achieved positive targeting locks, the drones executed their final, desperate tactical gambit. Small wing-mounted pods on each unmanned aerial vehicle activated, releasing clouds of precisely engineered chaff particles. Each particle was specifically designed to bloom in the atmosphere and create massive phantom radar signatures. To the Tor M2's sophisticated fire control computer, the 7 drones had instantaneously become 70 targets. The automated system was overwhelmed with ghost contacts. Its targeting priority algorithms were thrown into complete chaos. The Tor M2 began firing interceptor missiles. Multiple surface-to-air missiles screamed from launch rails, detonating harmlessly in the center of the chaff cloud. Simultaneously, the Pantsir system, attempting to provide supporting fire, achieved targeting locks on what its computer assessed as leaking threats. But in the electronic confusion, it locked onto the friendly Orlan 10 command platform circling overhead. Russian operators could only watch in absolute horror as their own integrated air defense systems fratricide each other out of the sky. During the 20-second window of fratricidal confusion, the actual attack drones, having transited through their own electronic smokescreen, were now mere feet from their objective. The multi-layered netting revealed its fatal architectural flaw. There were gaps at the upper structure, where industrial equipment met open sky. The relay artificial intelligence transmitted final attack vectors. The 7 drones pitched upward sharply, clearing the top edge of defensive netting, and dove directly downward into the heart of the L-24300 unit. The resulting explosion was the largest of the night. A column of thick black smoke mushroomed 1,000 feet into the atmosphere. Russian forces had committed everything they possessed to this defense, and in the end, they had only succeeded in shooting themselves down. The final Leleka attack drone impacted the L-24300 hydrotreater unit at precisely 0446 hours on October 16th. 15 pounds of high explosive striking a hydrotreater unit resembles introducing an ignition source into a high-pressure fuel bomb. Once it ignites, there's no suppressing the resulting inferno. The explosion ignited a petroleum firestorm that crippled $47 million of critical industrial infrastructure. The secret weapon behind this pinpoint accuracy was the artificial intelligence software commanding the mission. It had analyzed thousands of hours of Russian electronic warfare jamming tactics, learning to predict the Krasukha's frequency hopping patterns with 95% accuracy. It transformed the attack swarm into a ghost that Russia's billion-dollar defensive systems simply could not detect. In a single coordinated night operation, 4 of Russia's most strategically important refineries were either severely damaged or completely knocked offline. The total operational cost for Ukraine: approximately $400,000 in unmanned aerial vehicles. The cost to Russia: over $100 million in direct infrastructure damage and the crippling of facilities that process a combined 43 million tons of petroleum annually. That represents 38% of Russia's refined fuel exports temporarily crippled. sending strategic shockwaves through their entire military-industrial complex. But the genuine damage wasn't economic, it was strategic. The tactical dominoes began falling almost immediately. Panicked, the Kremlin ordered S-400 Triumph and Pantsir air defense systems to be withdrawn from forward combat positions in Ukraine and redeployed to protect remaining petroleum refineries. Suddenly, massive gaps appeared in the air defense umbrella, covering Russian ground forces. And into that void, Ukrainian high-mobility artillery rocket systems and attack drones began operating with impunity, launching devastating strikes on command posts and ammunition depots that had been effectively untouchable just days before. Russia was now attempting to ride a bicycle in a tank fight. In the span of a single-night operation, Ukraine proved a terrifying new doctrine of modern warfare. It's not about who possesses the larger military force, but who can intellectually outmaneuver their opponent. Russia believed its petroleum infrastructure was its greatest strategic strength. Ukraine just transformed it into its most critical vulnerability. The lesson is straightforward and absolute. Never underestimate an adversary that can transform a cheap, unmanned aerial vehicle and sophisticated software into a weapon system capable of bringing an empire to its knees. Ukrainian forces demonstrated that in 21st century warfare, technological superiority and massive defense budgets matter far less than tactical innovation and strategic thinking. $400,000 in drones defeated over $100 million in advanced air defense systems through superior planning. The Phantom Swarm Protocol represents a fundamental shift in military doctrine. It proves that small, coordinated autonomous systems, guided by advanced artificial intelligence and layered deception tactics, can achieve strategic effects previously requiring massive conventional forces. For Russian military commanders, the tactical question is now existential. Do you withdraw additional air defense systems from forward combat positions, risking total collapse of your defensive lines? Or do you leave your economic heartland vulnerable to the next coordinated wave? There are no good options remaining, only degrees of strategic defeat. Ukraine has demonstrated unequivocal tactical superiority in this new domain of warfare. And that superiority was achieved not through matching Russia's military budget, but through outthinking them at every level. This is the future of modern conflict. Welcome to the age of intelligent swarms.